anyone who was in the hiking area who saw something or heard something or took any pictures, contact them.
Should people in this community be concerned about someone running around targeting kids?
My response is no. I feel safe for this community.
Hey guys, so what do you think about that? This was a question posed very early on. Should the community feel safe? Should they feel concerned? And this was from 5 years ago, as you can see over there, right? So what do you think about that statement? Should the community feel safe? The guys said, I think they said, should the community feel concerned? And the response was no, they shouldn't feel concerned. 5 years later, 5 years later, Keegan Kline comes onto the radar in a big way with many, many, many charges. And then Richard Allen, right? So certainly in that context, it's quite an interesting statement, right? So before we continue, I want to play you guys another clip, this time from, right? This time from News Nation, where they put up a story about 4 days ago dealing with the latest developments. So let's listen to that very quickly. This is from News Nation.
Right now, News Nation is piecing together information about another man, once considered a person of interest in this case. His name, Ronald Logan. Logan owned the property where Libby and Abby's bodies were found. In an FBI search warrant obtained by News Nation, a special agent stated there is probable cause to believe that Logan has committed the crime of murder. So
if you were new to this case, would you not assume that this is the latest development? That is the title of this video, the latest developments in the Delphi murder case. And then there's this talk about there's probable cause to believe that Ronald Logan committed the crime of murder, right? And there's evidence that could be found on Ronald Logan's property, right? If you were new to this case, wouldn't you assume, jeepers, this is brand new evidence, this is the latest developments, right? This is a story from News Nation just, I think, 4 days ago, right? So I think one can legitimately ask, in terms of this, are these new developments, right? I think there's one more clip I want to play, and that is featuring Ron Logan himself. This is from WLF-ITV. Okay.
Who'd ever think someone would be murdered in your backyard?
Ron Logan has lived on this property in Delphi for more than 50 years.
I don't even recall any homicides in Delphi. I just don't recall any, but a double homicide, this is a first.
So there you can actually hear Ron Logan's voice. He's sort of got a old guy's voice, for the lack of a better word, right? And so you hear him, you see him, you can kind of see his build. You can also see that he's got obvious gray hair. He's got a gray mustache, gray hair coming out the sides. Looks like he needs to wear glasses ordinarily. Does he have a point when he says, I don't really remember there being a murder in Delphi at all? Does he have a point? Let alone a double murder? Is Delphi kind of like a town like Boulder, where you don't really have homicide investigators because you don't really have homicides, right? So in this analysis, I'm kind of going to do almost a similar thing to what News Nation did. I'm not going to call it new developments, though, but I'm going to go into the affidavit. Now, I'm sure a lot of other channels have done that. I'm doing it not so much to test whether I think Ron Logan is a suspect. I don't really think that's even on the table. I'm doing that to re-look at what is in the affidavit, right? one of the things that you may or may not know is that the girls had no defensive wounds. What does that tell you? The other thing that I want to look at is Keegan Klein's, I think it's 119-page statement. But anyway, a statement that he gave. I'm not sure where I get the 119 from, but anyway, Keegan Klein gave a statement, and we're going to deal with that. And it's sort of coming back to the title of this analysis, which is things that I say isn't evidence. Do you think that is true? Do you think someone saying things that I say isn't evidence? Think about in the John Benet Ramsey case, you had the parents making statements. What ultimately happened in terms of the grand jury investigation there? When Chris Watts made a statement, when it was polygraphed, just like Keegan Klein was polygraphed, and he failed at polygraph. When Chris Watts was polygraphed, on the basis of that and of what followed that, he was literally arrested. So look at also what happened in the Caitlin Armstrong case, where she made certain statements without being Mirandized. Do those have any legal import? So to say saying something isn't evidence, absolutely not. I mean, in law, you go into a courtroom and you say things under oath, and that is regarded as evidence. In fact, it's referred to as giving your evidence, right? Giving your testimony, giving your evidence. Okay, that is something that I sort of feel like YouTubers don't seem to appreciate, is when they are talking like I am now, you are actually literally stating something in the public domain, and can you say whatever you want? Can you say whatever you think? Can you speculate about just about anything? And I know YouTube seems to think that you can. We're starting to see evidence that you can't. Certainly this year, we've seen some evidence that you can't just say whatever you think, that there are consequences even if you don't acknowledge them. So before we kind of get going, I just want to have a look at some of your comments. And just greet you guys. Terry Dean, good to see you. Cotton Star, yeah, statements are evidence. Behavior can be evidence as well. Cotton Star says, and to me, it's the most revealing. Yeah, I mean, statement analysis, absolutely. Crime Time, Wine Time says, I cannot wait until we know all the details of how they found Richard Allen. Well, we are going to have to wait. We are going to have to wait. Yeah, Magical Mother says, in terms of Ron Logan, his voice is a wispy whistle to it, just like a lot of oldish people. There's sort of the lips sometimes become, what's the word, looser, literally, and there's a bit of going on, right? Dave says he sounds tired, like he hasn't slept all night. Bonnie says, is there a way to reach you privately? You can reach me via Twitter. Shall we play another little piece of what Ron Logan's saying here?
As far as I know, I don't. But it's just crazy.
He never would have imagined his property would turn into a murder scene.
It's just terrible. I just can't imagine that. My son, when he was a kid, he and his buddies played in here for all the time. I mean, he was born here.
So if you think about this idea of him saying, I can't imagine this happening. Did somebody else imagine it happening? Did someone else premeditate, basically framing Ron Logan, right? Or just simply misdirecting the crime scene? Okay, so there's a really unfortunate statement, which is there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? Have you heard that statement? And there is a poor little cat, although it's not literally being skinned. But you guys know about that statement, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? Now, in the same way, there's more than one way to investigate DELPHI, right? One way is you look at the that fuzzy camera footage. You draw a sketch. You listen to the audio. You search for SOs, right? In other words, it's almost an outside-in approach. You basically say, I'm an outsider. I don't know what's going on here. I see someone walking. Who could he be? Well, let's focus on surfaces. Let's look at his face and how he walks and how he's dressed, and everything is surface. Let's look at where he is on the bridge. Let's listen to the audio. Let's draw a sketch and put the sketch all over the place. And let's base 90% of our investigation on a sketch and on surfaces. And then how well do you think that side of skinning the cat went? How well do you think that side of the investigation went? Now, the other way to skin a cat in terms of investigate a case like this is from the inside out, right? In other words, not focusing on surfaces, but focusing on what is inside that. So in other words, what is somebody thinking? What is the invisible aspect to all of this? What is going on behind a mask? What is unseen in terms of the story? And all of that stuff has to do with things that you don't normally see on the surface. So things like cell phone activity, pings, texts, photos, right? Digital data going back and forth. The other thing that is from the inside out is social media. What is somebody communicating privately, ostensibly, and what is that telling you about who that person is? And so, in other words, there are almost two totally different approaches to the DELPHI case. I think the focus has been on a kind of, is it right brain? I'm not sure if it's right or left brain, but sort of an analytical approach and a sort of analysis of the surface, right? Not an intuitive approach, not an imaginative approach, where you try and intuit the far more difficult area of, for example, child psychology, the far more difficult area of dynamics, right? Does that make sense? Let's have a look at some of your comments. Railvin says, Logan actually seems in disbelief. Sharon Drury says, put glasses on Alan's picture. Mel Stiller says, one clear misdirection is putting the girls' bodies on Logan's property. Well, either it is or it isn't. Okay, so do you get what I'm saying? That there are two ways in a way to investigate this case. The one is by the outside in, looking at surfaces, which is a very superficial, weak, shallow, low intelligence way of doing something. The other option is inside out, which is far more complicated, far more difficult, but also far more intuitive. And you could also argue intelligent and ultimately was successful in this case. So you could kind of ask the question, where we are right now, which approach would you say worked? Going from the outside in or going from the inside out? Which one do you think exposed the murderer? So another way of saying that also is to say, instead of focusing on the perpetrator, instead of trying to figure out his thoughts and his profile and even what he looked like, you can actually focus on the other side, the victim, and look at what that victim may have done to solicit. And I don't mean by that she tried to solicit Richard Allen, but that how this victim came on the radar of some sort of predatory opportunist. So in other words, what messages was coming out from the victim in terms of social media, in terms of just pure messaging, what was kind of being communicated. Now, I would dearly love to play this. Is Julie Melvin in chat? Because it's her video. I don't really want to play it without her permission. But Julie Melvin has got a link to the Libby German compilation of her music videos, and there you can actually see Libby strutting her stuff, right? So I'm putting a link to that. I'm sure many of you have seen it, but I'm putting a link to that in chat. I will just show you the kind of a paused section of her video. It's basically this video here, right? Where you see that's Libby German compilation of her music videos, and you basically see her sort of lip syncing and performing, in a way flirting with the camera. That is, in a way, the inside out approach, where you start saying, this is what she's thinking, this is who she is, this is what she's wearing. There's also a brief clip in this video where you actually see Abby right beside her, also sort of playing along, right? But in any event, what you're seeing here is you're getting a sense of who Libby is. You're getting a sense of who Abby is. And you're also getting a sense of the other person that you don't know who's watching. What is that person seeing? What is that person feeling? What is that person sort of strategizing, right? And so can you see how that's an inside-out approach, but it's nevertheless possibly going to take you through through social media, through digital means. It's going to link you up. It's going to tie hands with the perpetrator, right? Yeah, Libby was being a 14-year-old. I only just joined. Welcome, Sue. Good to see you. Calgil, good to see you as well. Okay. So I think I want to get started. So I'm going to just do that. And so let me just read what I've written here. Those dynamics in terms of child psychology often lead you to the perpetrator psychology. So in other words, and this is such a, I think, even if I say it myself, I think this is quite an astute point. If you go into the child psychology, right? In other words, you get to know Libby on her own terms. Bear in mind, Libby has probably been communicating for weeks with some other profiles out there. And so you are starting to understand, in a way, what the dynamic, the real dynamic has been going on, not only between Libby and whichever account, but the other way, how that account might be trying to take advantage of child psychology. And that's why I think it is quite intuitive to say or to suggest that Valentine's Day may have played a big role in this. I've seen people totally dismissive of that, totally scoff at that, but I think it's because you're not going into the child psychology enough. You're not in the shoes of this person. You're not seeing the hearts and the performances and all of that stuff going on. You're not seeing all the posturing, all the attempts to get attention. You're not seeing that she doesn't have a boyfriend and she's actually in love with Anthony Schott. You're not seeing that. And so Valentine's Day comes along and Anthony Schott says, hey, do you want to meet? Yeah, of course I want to meet. Do you mind if I bring my friend along? Right? So the dynamics of child psychology often lead you to the perpetrator psychology better than trying to figure out the perpetrator, because he's doing the exact same thing in a way that we are. He's trying to take advantage. Well, he's first of all trying to figure out, and then once he's figured out, he's trying to take advantage of a young girl's psychology. So can you see how a key to the criminal psychology is actually almost in the inverse? You don't look at the criminal, you look at his target and you figure out what is through the target. What is this criminal thinking? What is this criminal doing? What could or would this criminal do? And isn't that ultimately how the criminal was caught? Was they started perhaps looking at her phone, maybe as late as the last year or so. Tina Vogel says Valentine's Day was an opportunity. That's what I think. Jennifer Wade says Inside Out. So I think it was trying to take advantage of a young girl's psychology, and that is the whole thing. That's what grooming is all about: figuring out what somebody wants, what somebody likes, and sort of pretending to give them what they want, and also pretending to be who they want, right? Pretending to be a young, hot model type musician who's got a lot of money and fast cars. And I don't know how to say this to you, but is it okay if I tell you that I'm interested in you? Is it okay if I tell you that I'm actually I find you attractive? You know what I mean? That kind of thing going on. Yeah. Okay. So now we're going to deal with the riddle of Anthony's shots, right? Unscrambling the riddle of Anthony's shots reveals all. And I did put up a poll. If you haven't voted, make sure that you do. But the poll is basically, how important is Keegan Klein to the DELPHI investigation? And when I first looked at the poll, it was 50-50. Now it's make or break, that Keegan Klein is kind of the key to the DELPHI investigation. Almost 60% of you are saying that. And then 40%, still quite a large proportion, are saying, well, Keegan Klein is actually less important than Richard Allen. It's kind of a tricky question because there's definitely truth to both aspects. But I do think Keegan Klein is make or break. I think what has happened is he's made a plea deal, and that is what has created a breakthrough. But it's possible that breakthrough may not last if media interest goes in a particular direction, kind of thing. I also think there's some truth to the idea that is Keegan Klein really more important than Richard Allen? Well, if Richard Allen is the actual perpetrator, well, then he can't be. Is important in terms perhaps of the investigation, but if it can't be more important than the actual perpetrator, right? At the scene, good to see you here. Thanks for that. Yeah, that's true. Okay. Cynthia, don't worry, we're only getting into it really from this moment. Okay. So it's unfortunate. Did you guys know this, that Libby unfortunately was in love with Anthony Shots? Did you know that she'd been engaging with him for weeks, up until and even on the day of the murder? It wasn't just a random thing here or there, and it's a sort of unsubstantiated theory. It's absolutely grounded. This is absolutely grounded in the dynamics, right? To me, the fact that, I don't know if it's her last communication, but it was certainly a communication on the day. And bear in mind, they sort of went out there, what was it? Was it 1:35? But sort of, kind of in the middle of the day. They didn't leave all that much of the day to communicate, just the morning, right? So the fact that some of the very final and only communications on that day were with Anthony Shots shows you how important he was, and also probably shows you that there was probably a huge amount of communication going on, a huge correspondence, late at night, early in the morning, all hours, going on, and possibly even sort of developing momentum of some kind. Was it becoming more suggestive? Was it becoming more urgent? Was it becoming more emotional? Or what do you think? What else is going to happen over a period of time? What images were shared both ways? What were they talking about over several weeks? Well, what do you think they were talking about? Right? I mean, you've got to, in your mind, you've got to try and populate several weeks worth of correspondence between someone who appears to be a sexy rock musician with lots of money and is available, and a vulnerable, impressionable 14-year-old with a sort of a giddy sidekick. What do you think they're talking about over several weeks? Not 1 hour, not 1 day, not 2 days, not 1 week, several weeks. Something has got to populate all of those exchanges. Or what do you think it is, right? Kami Burchett, good to see you here. Jenny says, why would Libby bring a friend? Well, for backup, for sort of security, right? The other thing that's quite interesting is that Libby appears to have been engaging with several authors within the same account. What do you think that means? What do you think that means to say, although Libby was probably in her mind engaging with a guy called Anthony Schatz, in reality, who do you think she was engaging with? I don't mean specifically this person or specifically that person. I mean, do you think it was specifically one person? And if it wasn't one person, how many were there? And if there were more than two, like what kind of arrangement was going on amongst this community of losers, right? And you could actually theoretically have a scenario where it could have been anonymous. It could have been a group who come together and they kind of do the same thing and they work together towards the same objective, but they don't really anticipate that someone is going to commit double homicide. You know, you could sort of almost imagine that the goal of these men is to get images. That's really the common agenda. But then one of those men commits double homicide. I think the only way it could do that and expect to get away with it is if the other men don't actually know his identity. In other words, it's kind of like a blind membership. You know someone else is using something, but you don't actually know who they are, right? There's sort of a protection element in that. Hoji says, did Keegan Klein sell access? Well, that's definitely a possibility. If you think about selling marijuana, let's say you don't have a job and you're struggling to make a living and you sell marijuana, well why not? I don't mean why not as in should you do this? I mean, if someone was doing that, why wouldn't someone in that frame of mind not also be involved in selling other things? In other words, if you're selling things on like a gray market or whatever you want to call it, wouldn't you also be selling other things? And think about it today. I can't really speak all that authoritatively about it because, I mean, it's 5 years ago. In 2017, did a site like OnlyFans exist, right? Did OnlyFans exist, which is a site where you can purchase something similar. It's actually a website dedicated to that. It's also become increasingly like that dating sites that you go to that are more and more targeting, you know, it could be singles above the age of 50 or whatever, but it's become more and more kind of niche, all of this kind of things. And so couldn't that have been something that emerged out of that, almost as a precursor to OnlyFans, right? Okay, so let's continue. So if you really think about it, law enforcement never lacked evidence in the Abby and in the murders of Abby and Libby. What they seem to lack is the nous to piece it together. I don't know if you guys agree with that. Just think about that idea. You know, did they ever really lack evidence? They had video, they had audio, they had Libby's phone, they had the crime scene, they had knowledge of the staging, they had the fabric of a small town. but most importantly, they actually had Libby's phone and they could theoretically track what was going on. So did they really lack evidence, or did they lack the knowledge how to put the inside out approach, how to piece that together? Because it is complicated. You know, when you look at the Chris Watts phone data review, it looks like it's this absolutely simple story of what happened, and it kind of is. But it took a agent to go through all that and delete all the noise and fluff in order for the underlying narrative to shine through. And that's also what I try to do when I wrote my books. The same thing applies with Libby's account. Someone had to go and look at that and realize that is an innocent account, that's an innocent encounter, that is just messing around, that's not really a big thing, that looks odd, but actually it's just messing around, and sort of weed out all of that noise and fluff in a teenager's in that sort of cacophony of banal entertainment and silly amusements, and find their way to that dark thread that is running through that, right? It may seem simple on this side. Oh, there's that dark thread. But on the other side, when you imagine if you gave someone your phone and you were aware that on your phone was something embarrassing, and you gave your phone to someone else and you didn't tell them anything, you just gave them your phone, do you think they would find that embarrassing thing very quickly or very easily? Would they know where to begin looking? It's the same kind of thing. Mel Stiller says, when I was 13, I wanted to marry Elvis Presley. Well, Mel, if you were 14, you may have just cracked the nod. Thanks a lot, TC. Thanks for that. Yeah, Amachidoro says, I doubt very much if Keegan Kline wanted to actually meet someone and let them see what he really looked like. Absolutely. I mean, you can imagine them seeing him from the other side of the bridge, like the far, far side of the bridge, and going running, screaming in the opposite direction, and leaving like a cloud of dust. Okay. Zircon says, I'm surprised the FBI didn't do that with a phone. I'm sure that they did, but they may have needed the other side of that. Like, who is Anthony Shots? Is he this hot guy or not? You don't know. Like, you also don't know if certain avatars are real or not. So an avatar that is a sexy young kid who is maybe a surfer may actually be a sexy young kid who's a surfer. Another account that could be a geeky kid with spots may turn out to be a twisted grandfather. You know, you just don't know. And I think on Instagram, if I'm guessing correctly, I think Libby had 400. She was following 400 people. That's quite a few people to go through, right? So that is actually what the woods looked like. The woods looked like that, not like this, right? This didn't happen in summer with all of this sort of camouflage and shielding. It happened with this kind of terrain where there was actually very little, and that changes things. That's also important to bear in mind, that there was a very thin mesh in terms of line of sight, right? A very thin mesh. Okay. Hodgie says a total bridge troll. It's quite an interesting idea, because in the Three Billy Goats graph, you literally had a bridge and a troll underneath it. In this case, you have the troll on the top. Okay, so let's start dealing with Keegan Kline's statements, right? So if law enforcement couldn't see who Bridge Guy was, or then they couldn't tell who he was from the audio, and let's face it, they couldn't, even though arguably he was right next door to the sheriff's office, it appears they thought whoever Anthony Shots was the killer. I think that was an early sort of idea, right? There's an early-ish idea that Anthony Shots could be the killer, to some extent because of the simple thing of Libby communicating with that person the last day of her life, right? Let's take that away. So you get the idea that they found Anthony's Shots and then they maybe hit a dead end. Who is Anthony Shots? So it's a little like the theory that whoever wrote the Ramsey ransom note was John Bonet's killer. It makes sense. So in the same thing, we don't know who Bridge Guy is, but whoever Anthony Shots was the killer. And so if you think about that psychology, is Anthony Shots Bridge Guy? Is Bridge Guy Anthony Shots? Let me write that down. Is Bridge Guy Anthony Shots? What's the answer to that? Is Anthony Shots _ Shots Bridge Guy? If you take those two questions, is Anthony Shots Bridge Guy? Is Bridge Guy Anthony Shots? You're literally simplifying the outside-in approach and the inside-out approach, and you're also kind of juxtaposing them. You're literally bringing them face to face, and you're kind of saying, do they actually kind of correspond? Do they fit together? How do they fit together, right? So if you think about, let's take it from, is Bridge Guy Anthony Shots? What do you think the answer is to that? Like, is it literally Bridge Guy's one person, Anthony Shots is one person, and they are the same person? Do you guys believe that? So let's do a quick poll. Is Bridge Guy one person? Is Anthony Shots one person? Are they the same person? Yes or no? What do you guys think? Yeah, someone says he's way bigger than Bridge Guy. And although it sounds like it's the same question, in a way it's not. Is Anthony Shots Bridge Guy? And if you think about it, Anthony Shots almost does sound like plural. Like Anthony's and then Shots, different, like 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots. Is this plural entity, which we know now for a fact is a plural avatar shared by several men. We don't know if it's 2 men, we don't know if it's 3, we don't know if it's 10, but it appears to be at least 2. So the answer is kind of yes and no. Anthony Shots is Bridge Guy, but there's more than one Anthony Shots. So some Anthony Shots individual /s aren't Bridge Guy, right? Railvin says, how stupid to let other people use an account for that when their account tracks back to you. Not necessarily. You can have, as I say, blind accounts, and sometimes criminals do stupid things. In the Chris Watts case, he literally took people out of his home knowing that there's a CCTV camera right next to his truck, but he did that anyway. He committed a crime and he confessed 2 days later. That's also stupid. So crimes aren't necessarily intelligent. The other thing that Bridge Guy may have anticipated is if he exposes Bridge Guy. So in other words, Bridge Guy is saying, if somebody who knows something about this exposes me, given that a certain amount of time's already gone by, well, then you are going to be exposed as well. there's too much dirt in your ledger for you to put up your hand and come forward. You exposing me, you've got just as much dirt in your ledger, right? Okay. So in terms of, is the person who wrote the Ramsey note John Bonet's killer, is bridge guy Anthony Shots? It, you know, and is Anthony Shots the killer? It kind of makes sense, but it's not necessarily true. And I actually personally doubt whether either of those theories are true. So now we're going to go to the final 10 pages. At last, we're at this point. We're going to deal with the final 10 pages of the Keegan-Klein transcript. And this is where the interview finally warms up to this idea of access. Who's got access to this account, right? Now, I appreciate that this is covering terrain some of you guys have covered before. I'm talking about on other channels, or you guys have read this before. So you might say, Jeepers, what you're going through is nothing new at all. It's not a new development. Well, the only thing that's new is that I'm covering it now. I've covered it quite a long time ago on Patreon. When was this? About a week ago on Patreon. But I haven't covered it on YouTube ever. And maybe I'm going to push the learning curve outwards, or maybe you're going to say, Jeepers, this is old news. I'm not learning anything here. But if you are learning something, and if you are enjoying this analysis, be sure to leave a comment just saying, you dealt with just the last 10 pages. Can you deal with more? And then maybe I will. Okay. So it's, as I said, I've not really been paying attention. I just needed to take a lot of crap off my desk. So I've not been paying attention really to other YouTube channels. So I don't know what I'm duplicating, and I don't know what I'm not duplicating. So you guys are going to have to tell me, yeah, wow, let's have more analysis on that. Or, oh no, 10 channels have already covered that. What, six this way and that way, and 6 ways back to Friday or whatever. Okay, so let's deal with this page from Keegan-Klein's transcript. So he's asked, but who then would have had access? Who would have said that then who would have said that then if you who supposedly is the only one who has access? And then he says nobody. Now what you're going to notice is Keegan will kind of deny, and he will obfuscate until it's quite clear that they know something, and then he'll admit that he knows something. You see this quite a lot in interrogations. Someone will say, no, I don't know anything about that, or no, it's not true, until the law enforcement says, yes, but that. Oh, I see you know that. Oh, okay, sorry, I forgot about that, or whatever. You know what I mean? So here they're trying to chip away at this idea of access. Are you the only one who has access? And he's kind of trying to say, yes, I'm the only one who has access. So there he says, nobody. Then the questioner goes on to say, who would have, but that's not, we know that's not. And then he says, I'm saying like nobody had access but me. So he's kind of reinforcing that answer. Nobody, I'm saying nobody had access but me. Then he says, so then it was you who said that. And I think where they're going with this is this idea of, if you were the only one who had access, then you committed this crime, right? Which is quite a strong argument. It's quite a strong argument to, if it's not only you, then for your own good, you need to tell us that. Otherwise, you're going to fry for this, right? So D Loved by 2XXO says, thanks for that. HLN stated 2 days ago that the FBI has reason to believe that Ron Logan knew. That's a theory. I think you're dealing with very old information going back to March 2017. So if you want to say, let's go back to March 2017, then you can do that. I'm dealing with this year. So the developments with Keegan Klein and Richard Allen. If you want to say, let's go back 5 years, and that's where that's the epicenter of the investigation, go there. But Ron Logan has died, and Ron Logan was never made a suspect, and he was never arrested. Richard Allen was made a suspect and arrested. And there's this big news conference to announce it. So if you feel like it's Ron Logan, go to Ron Logan. But to me, I think it's a bit of sensational reporting to say it's a latest development. And right now, the FBI believe that. No, they believed it. There was probable cause in 2017, right? There's probable, but then they never acted on that. Also, if you were Ron Logan, why on earth, if you were Ron Logan, why would you commit a crime on your own property and then just leave the bodies lying there? Why wouldn't you bury them or dispose of them? In other words, the same idea we have with Bridge Guy, trying to move the location away from the bridge. If it's Ron Logan, why on earth does he want to move the location to himself and then leave it there? I mean, they were there overnight. So why wouldn't you bury the bodies or take them to a landfill? Why would you simply leave it on your property so that when they're found, everyone says, we think it's you? I don't know. Are you thinking that far? I mean, it's quite important to think that far. Okay, so I think D, do you believe in Pizzagate? Do you believe that so D, answer this question if you can. Do you think that Keegan Klein is like the head honcho, the brains behind the Indiana branch of this elite, high-powered, like this absolutely elite ring of some of the most powerful people in America? Do you think Keegan Klein's like the CEO of the Indiana branch? Do you think he's that, or do you think maybe he's just kind of a sad sack guy who's sort of a bit of a loser who's trying to make a living? Do you think he's the super powerful kingpin, or maybe not? What's your response to that? Thanks a lot, Deborah. Anyway, so let's move on from that. So they're trying to find out here, did he get access, or did he give access to someone else? So he says here, what I'm saying is I don't remember saying that, but it had to be me if I'm, and then what does it say there? If I'm the only person. And there he, in a way, snookers himself. He's saying, it had to be me if I'm the only person that uses it. Then the question is, so why would you say I was going to meet her, but she never showed up? So that was actually where law enforcement found proof from his account saying, because it was like, do you know about this? And then he said, yeah, I was going to meet her, but she never showed up. So this is after Libby died. This was the chatter that Ali found. This is from, you can see over there, that's the question from law enforcement. They're saying, why would you say, that should be in inverted commas, I was going to meet her. Keegan Klein, was going to meet her, Libby, on the bridge on the 13th, but Libby never showed up. Well, actually, she did show up. Libby did show up, and then she was murdered. Then the questioner says, why would you say that? Then he says, why would I ever go meet someone? So is in a way acknowledging that he lied, that he said she never showed up, but he never actually went to meet her. In other words, he didn't show up, right? Then the questioner says, I don't know, you tell me, right? So we're going to go to the next section from the transcript. That's That's over here, I think. So he answers, exactly, I wouldn't. That's like, then the question is, that's right, I need to know. He says, no, I'm saying I probably said that, but what I'm saying is I would never go meet someone. The girlfriend I have now, I wouldn't even meet. That's quite a big statement. So he's saying, I've got a girlfriend right now and I would never meet her. He says, because I was like so nervous because of all the stuff that happened. I'm just like, and then the Ali says, so then did you give the information to someone else? I mean, in other words, the question is, did you tell someone? Did you verbalize? Did you say, guess what? I'm supposed to meet this teenager and I'm not comfortable doing that. Or, the moment she sees me, she's going to, sprint away. And then that person, knew about that, and then they sort of appropriated that meeting, right? In other words, verbally through the ether, right? Did you tell someone something? And then he says, no. Was there some sort of, I would, and then he goes on and says, I can see that happening. I can see you making a statement of, oh man, this girl wants to meet. She's going to the High Bridge today, and then whoever you told that to. And so that's where they're trying to get it from, is they're saying either you gave access to your account, or you must have told someone if it's not you, or it is you, and then you're in serious trouble, right? So let's go on to the next one. I think it's from here. So then he says, went to the High Bridge that day. Keegan Klein says, about stuff like that, I would never talk to someone about girls. I talk to, or what? I would never talk to someone about girls I talk to, or nothing. That's not what I do. Seems a bit of a bizarre statement. Anyway, then he goes on to, the question is, but then again, we have to go back to that one narrow scope of a conversation we're looking at. Why would you say that to that other person? So they know for a fact that what he said to someone else was, she never showed up, which implies he was there, but she never showed up. And of course, we know that's not true. She did show up. So law enforcement asks him, why would you say, as Anthony Shots, I was going to meet that girl and she didn't show up? It's a very critical and important question. Do you see that? He's literally being asked, Keegan Klein is being asked, why would you pretend as Anthony Shots to say, I was going to meet that girl? Who's that girl? Libby. But Libby didn't show up. Well, did Keegan go to meet that girl? And did she not show up? Well, actually, she did show up. Did he show up? If he didn't show up, who did show up? And his response is, I don't know. I don't know. Then he's asked, even before that, we have witness statements that Liberty was looking at meeting Anthony Shots. So in a way, what you're getting from that is that Libby wants to meet Anthony Shots. Who would think about that? So you kind of have this idea that Anthony Shots wants to meet, that Anthony Shots is manipulating all of this. But you could actually have a situation where Libby is 14, they've been communicating for weeks. She doesn't know she's dealing with an oaf. She thinks she's dealing with a super hot guy. It just doesn't make any sense that you're single. Let's meet. I would love to meet. This is incredible, right? And Libby's actually pushing to meet, and you can imagine Keegan Klein doesn't. But maybe someone who's aware of this conversation wants to manipulate that, wants to take advantage of it. That's what I'm talking about. That's the psychology from the inside out, that someone else is a predator to, wants to take advantage to. Libby wants to meet Anthony Shots. Well, what better time than the day before Valentine's Day? Does all of this make sense? Does it seem like sensible, anchored in the information conjecture? Because bear in mind, I'm fairly new to this case. So some of you are experts. I'm definitely quite new. So when they say we have witness statements that Libby was looking to meet Anthony Shots, what do you think that means? Do you think that means Abby knew? Of course, Abby is no longer a witness, but do you think it means Kelsey maybe knew that? Kelsey dropped them off. Do you think that she confided to her sister, I'm actually going to meet this guy? I somehow doubt it. Because Kelsey probably would have wanted to go with them as well. But there may have been other friends that she told, and also other friends that liked Anthony Shots, right? Weren't other friends saying, yes, and Anthony Shots is really cool. What did you say to him? I said this to him. So anyway, he says that's another piece that we're making this even bigger now, looking at this. Now we have multiple people. What's the rest of this statement? We have multiple people saying that. Why would Anthony Shots do that? And Keegan Klein responds, I don't know. I really don't have a clue. Now, do you remember what is in Richard Allen's written statement? I don't have a clue. I don't have a clue. It's the same kind of language, right? Anyway, he says, I really don't have a clue. Like I said, I don't remember talking to her, so I don't know why I would say that. So here, Keegan Klein is literally saying, I don't actually remember talking to Libby, like communicating with her. I don't remember like a single instance. I don't remember talking to her, so I don't know why I would say that. Then then Ali says, do you see why this needs cleared up? Then Keegan says, yeah, trust me, I know it needs clearing up. You need to find the person that did it. Yeah. So at least what they've got, where they've gotten Keegan Klein, where they've sort of pushed him, is where he's conceding there is a person, we've got to find him. He's saying it's not me, but he's also saying, well, there's no other option. So they've reached kind of an impasse in their discussion, and there's got to be some kind of make or break, right? This is in the last, I think, 10 pages of a very long transcript. So this is after a lot of talking, a lot of pressure, a lot of effort from law enforcement's part. So law enforcement says, well, the person that did it, as in sending those messages, was you. How does he respond to that? The person who did it, as in sending those messages, was you. So effectively what law enforcement are saying is the person who communicated with Libby via Anthony Shots is the killer. The same thing of the person who wrote the ransom note is the killer. And if it's not the killer, if you wrote the ransom note and you're not the killer, you better have an explanation. If Anthony Shots communicated with Libby, but you're not the killer, well, then you better tell us who it is. Otherwise, you are gonna, you're gonna be fried for this if you're not careful. So they are kind of implying here that person, that the killer is effectively Keegan Klein. Okay, it's the Ramsey equivalent of Patsy did something to John Bonet. No, I didn't. Well, if you didn't, tell us what happened. Why did you write the note? Who else worked on the note, right? So that's kind of thing. So on the one hand, this reminds me of the prime suspect in the Madeleine McCann case. He's in the right place. He fitted the profile. So Keegan Klein's in the right place, basically. He's in Peru. He's just north of that little reserve. He fits the profile. He seems to fit it perfectly. And like the suspect in the Madeleine McCann case, he apparently bragged online about doing something. In this case, not so much bragging online, just making certain weird statements like she didn't show up. well, then that suggests you were there. So why would you make that statement? But the bottom line is none of it really amounts to real evidence. Now, there wasn't a ransom note. I'm just comparing it to the John Bonet case. There wasn't a ransom note in this case. Okay. So let's go to the rest of this transcript. So the question you have from law enforcement, okay, well, I need cleared up why, right? And now it starts escalating, right? Okay, well, I need cleared up why. Why is a critical question in true crime. Let me do it like that. Then he says, I told you, you can see starting to get agitated. For the past 30 minutes, and if only you could hear the audio, but you kind of get a sense that now it's starting to get fraught. Now it's starting to, the tension starting to build up. Then he interrupts him. He says, listen. Keegan Klein then interrupts, says, I've told you, I'm not lying. I don't know anyone who did this. He's being adamant. He's getting emotional. He says, I didn't do this. I don't know anyone about I'm not sure what that is. I don't know any of that. Then he says, law enforcement says, you just said you knew and I wonder what that is. That's redacted. Then Keegan Klein says, I'm saying I don't know who looked in a fucking window. I don't know anything about that. You can see he's getting really riled up now, right? You feel like this is the make or break point. Then law enforcement says, and they're not backing down, they say, what I'm telling you is we need to clear up the statement of Anthony Shots. We need to do that because we can. Then he says, I said it 3 times now. I never remember saying that. Even if I said it, I don't remember saying that, right? Okay, but as law enforcement officer, you're investigating Keegan Klein, right? As law enforcement, you're investigating a murder at a gas station. Yeah, just because the person that you have on video and you have the evidence that did it says, well, I don't know. Can you leave it at that? Now, what he's doing there is giving an analogy. So please don't draw something into this that it's about a gas station. He's simply saying, if you've got someone on video, you've got that evidence, and or are you supposed to just leave that? We've got video of someone committing a murder. Okay, well, just put it in the drawer and move on. They're basically saying, Keegan Klein, we've got evidence. You need to make a statement. You need to provide an explanation. You have to provide an explanation. So then he says, you have to get evidence in a court of law. Ali says, you have video, you've got evidence, which they have in this case, they've got video. Then he says, yeah, is his face showing in that video and everything? So you can almost imagine Keegan Klein and Bridge Guy just in their own minds thinking they've got video, they've got audio, they've got sketches, but none of that matters. It doesn't actually mean anything. In other words, they are looking at that and they're saying, yeah, but what do they really have? It doesn't really look like anyone. Ha, 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 nothing to worry about here. And they're actually absolutely right, because all of that is a focus on surfaces, and what they know is that focus on surfaces hasn't got anyone anywhere at that point for 4 years, maybe 5 years, 4.5 years, 5 years, right? The thing that is going to get law enforcement somewhere is exactly this route. Speaking to Keegan Klein, asking about Anthony Shots, asking about his communications, asking about this inner world, asking about what is going on behind the mask, right? So you see how cynical he is. He says, yeah, is his face showing in that video and everything? Well, then take him to court. What do you mean? Right. So we have to clear up, just because someone says they don't remember, then he says, I know. Doesn't mean they didn't do it. So in other words, he's saying, you saying you don't remember speaking to someone, you don't remember, maybe you don't remember going there, that doesn't mean you didn't do it. So you need to prove that you didn't do it. And what is the best way to prove that you didn't commit a crime, especially if you didn't commit a crime, or to say who did? So then he says, that's the point I'm trying to make, okay? Then he says, I get what you're saying. Yes, I totally understand. So as riled up as Keegan Kline is, you can kind of tell he's realizing that he is facing a problem. Okay. So law enforcement is basically saying over and over to to Keegan Kline, that Anthony Schatz is the murderer, saying over and over again, Anthony Schatz is the murderer. We know you are Anthony Schatz, unless you know something we don't know. Do you guys agree with that? Do you guys agree with that assessment? Well, we've got Miley Sirius in chat. Good to have you here. Convenient memory loss. SW5 plus says, I guess he has no alibi. Bria says, Bridge Guy does look quite chubby. Renee says, hi, Nick, and all. Timmy, you are. Okay. Love Tina says they don't remember because they don't want to remember. Okay. SW Firefly says, I think they were just trying to push his buttons and see if he would confess. I don't think they really think that. Yeah, they're putting pressure on him, right? They're putting pressure on him. And do you think it's going to work? Do you think it's going to work? So this is the next section from that. Ali say, because we know for a fact that Anthony Schatz said those things. That's quite a strong statement. Keegan Kline answers right, and that's why it needs cleared up, right. And again, you saying you don't know does not clear it up. Can you see how they're like in a double bind here, or he's in a bind? Then he makes quite a big statement. He says, well, that's what you're going to get out of me because I really don't know. I don't remember saying that. That just goes to show how serious, I've talked to so many girls, I don't even remember saying that. Ali, they don't budge. He says, but again, I mean, we go back to the whole thing. You talk to a lot of girls, but unfortunately, one of the girls is dead. Yeah, you talk to a lot of girls, but one of the girls you talk to is dead. And we can't find the killer. But you did talk to her on the last day, right? He says, I understand that. Unfortunately, one of the girls that you were talking to was killed. You can see how the interview at this point is now on a knife edge. Is Keegan going to capitulate? It's really close to the end of the interview. Is he going to capitulate? Is he going to give something, or is he going to crawl back into his shell? Is he going to basically say, fuck off? What is he going to do? So the statement, can you see over here? He says, right over here, that's what you're going to get out of me because I really don't know, right? That statement does imply to my mind that he does know more, but that's all he's going to say. So saying, you know what? That is all you're going to get out of me. That's all you're going to take out of me. There's more inside, but that's all you're going to get out. Doesn't a statement like that imply that there's more inside? And this raises an important question. If it's not Kline, and I don't believe it is, and Ali believes it isn't, and I'm sure you guys believe it isn't. If you believe it is, you can say, I actually think Keegan Kline was running around the woods that day. I think most people believe it isn't, but then why isn't Kline being forthcoming? right? If Keegan Klein isn't, this is a really important question, guys. If Keegan Klein isn't guilty of killing Libby and Abby, why doesn't he say what happened or who it is? Why isn't Klein being forthcoming? Have you guys thought about that? He's innocent. He hasn't killed Libby or Abby. So why isn't he being forthcoming? What is the hold Bridge Guy has over him? That's another part of the question. Does Bridge Guy have some kind of hold over him? Or why is Klein trying to protect Bridge Guy enough to imperil himself in a murder investigation? Because that's where the situation is right now. That Klein is effectively protecting Bridge Guy, and that's effectively moving him into harm's way. It's moving him into trouble, potentially. He's kind of becoming a suspect. And he would then be in the mainstream media throughout the beginning of 2022. Do you remember a lot of us thought that he was the suspect? He looked the part, he sounded the part, he was implicated in a way, right? So if people think you're the suspect, why are you not saying what you know? Why not? Why imperil yourself if you are innocent? Why? So let's have a look at this. So he says, so that's why it needs cleared up. So Anthony, Keegan Klein says, so don't you think maybe I would think about that in my mind? That's quite a big statement. Don't you think I've thought about that? Then he says, absolutely, and that's why. Then he says, exactly. So why would I be saying I don't know, right? That's bringing us to a really interesting point where he's throwing the question law enforcement's way. Why do you think I would be telling you I don't know if by saying I don't know, I get all of the shade coming my way? Why do you think I would be saying I don't know? I think this is my response to that. Because Klein isn't protecting Bridge Guy. Who is he protecting? Let me say that again. Klein isn't protecting Bridge Guy. Who do you think he is protecting? He's protecting himself. How is he protecting himself? Well, if Klein set up Anthony's shots, think about this. If Klein set up the profile Anthony's shots, and in theory, if Richard Allen, for example, opportunistically took over a conversation, an online conversation that Klein discarded, or even another person, let's say Keegan Klein's father or any other person, and that person then, it was a kind of a loose lip sink ship situation. That person then passed on information to a third party, right? And somehow it came onto Richard Allen's radar, or for the sake of argument, Bridge Guy's radar, right? In other words, some other person opportunistically took over a conversation that Klein discarded, right, with Libby, and two girls ended up dead. Then Klein would be an accessory of sorts after the fact. You guys see that? Even if Klein didn't commit the crime, if he was setting up this whole thing and a third party did something and then he didn't say anything, he would be an accessory of sorts after the fact. And I think again also about the John Benet Ramsey case, where do you need to have done something to John Benet to also end up being an accessory? Think about it in that respect as well. Okay. But it's also impossible it's also possible the account was shared anonymously And so Klein he knew what happened. So he knew that the girls had died, but he didn't know who did it, just that it was connected to him. Let me say that again. It's also possible the account was shared, that's the Anthony Shots account, was shared anonymously. So Klein knew what had happened, but didn't know who did it, just that it was connected to him. Okay. The other aspect to consider is if Richard Allen did commit the murder, so he's innocent until proven guilty, but if hypothetically he did commit these crimes, would he really make his identity known to Klein? Like, would Richard Allen be someone using Anthony Shots? His email address is richardallen@whatever.com. Klein knows that he commits double murder, and then he just hopes or expects Klein to cover for him, because there's honor amongst thieves, there's honor amongst whatever. Or would he expect Klein to cover for him or even take the fall? That's quite a big expectation. I mean, if you put Keegan Klein and Richard Allen side by side, do they look like bosom buddies? Do they look like they go, what do bros do? They go to Vegas together. Do they look like part of the same wolf pack, right? So this suggests that in the same way the remains were left close to Ron Logan's property, in fact on his property, which implicated Logan, the social media linked back to Keegan Klein. I don't think too many people have thought about that. Let me say that again. In the same way that the remains linked back to Logan's property, the social media linked back to Keegan Klein. That was the first focus. That's why he's under the cosh right here. And didn't that suit the person who was actually responsible? Didn't the person responsible actually know that? Wasn't that another kind of misdirection? So if you think about it, there's this idea of digital breadcrumbs. Ron Logan has a criminal record. Perhaps Richard Allen knew this, or whoever was responsible knew this, knew his address and habits. And if he knew Keegan or not, perhaps he knew the originator of the Anthony Shots profile wouldn't want to come forward. But if the profile was found, well, it didn't belong to him. So perhaps the other user of the Anthony Shots profile had access to it, but it didn't actually belong to him. And if he scrubbed his, if he scrubbed his communications, well, then it was like another misdirection, right? The only way Keegan Klein could wriggle out of accountability, because he was accountable and he ought to have come forward, was by making some sort of plea deal. Because if Anthony Shots knew about another user and he didn't come forward, that effectively, you could argue, well, I suppose you could ask the question, doesn't that make him an accessory? You knew something related to this profile, you didn't come forward in 5 years. Doesn't that make you, so Stephanie makes quite a good point. Was it only Snapchat with Keegan Klein? Were there other, so as far as I know, Stephanie, it was Instagram catfishing that was then moved over to Snapchat. That's the way I understood it. So at this point, I feel the only way Keegan Klein can wriggle out of accountability, because he is accountable, is to make some kind of plea deal, is to say, okay, I'm going to tell you this. By telling you this, I'm implicating myself, but I'll tell you this in exchange for XYZ. Doesn't that make sense? Okay. Interestingly, similar to Nicole Kessinger and Patrick Frazee, Klein searched the internet about, can you trace IP addresses from social media? Interesting, isn't it? You sort of feel like he has a trail to be concerned about. He has digital breadcrumbs that he's really worried about. Yeah, Renee, plea deal to save himself. Okay. And then we're going to look at this next part. So we're now on page 187 of the transcript. Actually, that's wrong. That's not what I want to move over. It's this. Okay. 187. Let me do it like that and like that. Okay. So now we're getting to the nitty gritty. Now we're getting to the brass tacks, right? Ali says, and that's why you search. Can you trace IP addresses from social media? That's why you listen to the audio clip. That's why you did search server information. See how much information gets stored on servers, because you were thinking about it. Especially on a vacation, you're supposed to have fun. You're supposed to be in Vegas having fun. So Keegan is in Vegas searching about, can my IP address be tracked? He's listening to audio clips. So obviously they've looked at his browser history and they've been able to tell what he was doing then, right? Then he says that server thing isn't, that server thing, things about work and stuff, right? That's his sort of argument. Ali says, right. I think it's over here. Oh, sorry, that's that one. Oh, sorry, that's this part. Okay, right. I mean, searching about servers and stuff that would have something to do with my work. So then he kind of plays his hand. He tells him what they know. He says, so right after, and I'm talking minutes, that you are searching, police continue to pursue leads in Delphi girl's murder, girls missing after posting Snapchat messages article. All I mean, that's girls missing after posting Snapchat messages on article. You search, can you trace IP from social media? So you were thinking about the Delphi investigation. It's a little bit garbled that. Should we read it again? He says, so right after, I'm talking minutes later, you are searching, police continue to pursue leads in Delphi girl's murder. That should kind of be in inverted commas. Then girls missing after posting Snapchat messages. Then he says, I mean, that's girls missing after posting Snapchat messages, an article you search. After that, he searches, can you trace IP from social media? Notice it's from social media. So were you thinking about the Delphi investigation? Well, obviously he was, right? Obviously he was. Okay. So how does he respond to that? How do you think he responds? Were you thinking about the Delphi investigation? Do you think he says yes? Do you think he says no? Do you think he says, I don't remember? What do you think he says? Well, he says, I probably was, constantly. So the question is, were you thinking about the Delphi investigation? And here's a rare bit of honesty from him. I probably was thinking about the Delphi investigation. I probably was thinking about it constantly. Then Ali says, a few minutes later, there's where you start searching about internet servers. So randomly, you're reading all these articles. So now he knows that they're kind of onto him. They know what he did, when he did it, what he was doing. So that, yeah, they're turning in the screws, making it harder to wriggle out. So he says, so I was obviously like, well, I talked to a friend and stuff. So they obviously could see that I talked to a friend on Snapchat. That's probably why I searched that, because I was probably like, oh, fuck, I talked to that person's friend. So now he's kind of, can you see, he's kind of making a concession. He's saying, I don't remember talking to Libby. I didn't talk to Libby, but I did talk to a friend. He doesn't even say the friend's name. Then Ali says, but again, you didn't just talk to that person. I know. You talked to her. But what I'm saying is I don't remember talking to her. So in my brain, I was what's the next section? So if we skip back to page 171, this is where Klein is asked, why are you protecting someone? So we are going to come back to this. Let's just go to page 171. So here he says, like, yeah, it looks terrible. This is Keegan talking. In other words, he's acknowledging that his situation, the circumstances, all the evidence doesn't look good. He says, it looks terrible, but I promise you, like, I know you guys are looking for that person, and it's not me. I know absolutely nothing. And I get the whole something thing is like weird, but I swear I don't know anything. I don't know what that refers to. Ali says, yes, you do, man. I swear to God, I don't. Yes, you do. I really don't. Yes, you do. I don't. I can't wrap my head around why you're willing to put all of this on you. This is from law enforcement. Just saying, I don't understand why you are trying to allow all of this to be on you. Just tell us what happened. Why are you protecting somebody else? Then he says, who am I protecting? What are you talking about? So where he says, who am I protecting, he actually is probably protecting someone. And what he's trying to say here is, what do you know? I'm only going to tell you if you know. If you don't know, then there's no point in me implicating myself. Who am I protecting? What do you know? What are you talking about? Then he says, I mean, obviously you said that you didn't kill them, right? Yeah, what the fuck? Yeah, okay, of course. And now we go to, I think it's page 172. Okay, you think I know who killed them? This is so important, this section. Absolutely. Oh my God. So here he's like being very indignant. Is that feigned indignation? Is it real indignation? You think I know who killed them? Absolutely. Oh my God. Absolutely, because, and you know why I know that? Well, you're obviously terrible at your job. If you really honestly think that, you're absolutely terrible at your job, sir. I'm sorry to say that, but do you know who killed those girls? Flat out question. On the chin. No, and it's a risk saying this because the person you're talking to could just shut down. But he obviously feels that they're pushing him, they're nudging him, and now they need to nudge him kind of over the edge. Then he says, hang on, I'm not literally asking you right now. So where he says, do you know who killed those girls? And he says, no. Yari's worried that he's going to shut down. So he kind of backs off and he says, oh, hang on, I'm not literally asking you right now. Do you know for sure who killed those girls? No. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, you did say no both times in your polygraph. And guess what? That was deception. So it seems like a bit of sarcasm there, a bit of sort of false backtracking. But he's saying, when you said no, we saw that was deception indicated. So he says, hey, a lot of people fail those lie detectors. What are you talking about? Why do you think they can't use those in court? There's a reason for that. So you can see how he's quite slippery as he's thinking kind of ahead, right? Okay. I don't know how to say your name. Imochis Doro says looking for a false confession. Timmy, can I put you down? Okay. So the fact that Klein failed the lie detector on that question is significant. Let me just bring myself back a little bit. The fact that he failed the lie detector on that question, which is literally, do you know who killed those girls? That's huge. So if he was asked, do you know who killed those girls? And he said no, and the needle went like this, doesn't that mean that he either did know or he knew something, right? It could mean that he knew who killed Abby and Libby in the sense that there was another user on the account, but without knowing who that user was. On the other hand, it's also possible as time went by, think about this. it's possible as time went by that he figured out the answer. He figured out who it could be. Maybe he thought, well, it could be, let's say, 8 people. Then he thought, it can't be that one, can't be that one, can't be that one. Maybe he eventually did figure out the answer. Or someone else figured out the answer. Perhaps his father figured it out and told him. In hindsight, and I'm not sure it's in this transcript, maybe Stephanie will know, haven't we subsequently learned that we know that others did have access to Anthony Shotz's account? And possibly Klein told law enforcement that in exchange for a plea deal. Possibly Klein also had to give additional access to his devices or did something that led to Richard Allen coming onto Ali's radar. There's some kind of missing piece in this puzzle. What is it? Did he give them additional access to his devices? Did he open up some of his social media? Did he mention someone else that knew something or some other account? Even if Richard Allen was using Anthony, or did he reveal photos? Even if Richard Allen was using Anthony's shots, it wouldn't be a smoking gun. Let me emphasize that. Let me emphasize that. Even if Richard Allen was using Anthony's shots, it wouldn't be a smoking gun because it could also be Keegan Klein. So that wouldn't be enough just to say Richard Allen was using the Anthony Shots account. I certainly hope that that is not all law enforcement have, because that would not be a slam dunk then. Yeah, Jody says there's talk of a shared Dropbox as well. So let me take it a little bit further. Just as Keegan Klein's use of the account wasn't a smoking gun, so it's possible that they linked another user to Richard Allen. And think about how kind of suspicious it is that Richard Allen doesn't seem to have any social media. It would be interesting to know, did Richard Allen kind of delete his social media in 2017? Right? So just as Klein's use of the account wasn't a smoking gun, possibly they got Richard Allen on the radar. Maybe he even gave them like 5 names, and maybe they searched 2 or 3 properties or whatever. And then what they did was they searched Allen's property, and who knows, perhaps a smoking gun was found there. Perhaps they got Richard Allen's name, did a search, and maybe they found something: clothing, DNA, jewelry, PORN, perhaps all of these, right? Okay, so let's go back to the transcript. Okay, someone says you're forgetting about KK's cousin. Okay, let me bring this up. So Ali says, and then when you're exchanging Dropbox links, that goes to your Dropbox. That's a different story too. Then he says, what do you mean I never had Dropbox? So here is already in a corner, right? What's happened over here is he's kind of been caught out. So you know what law enforcement will often do is they'll ask questions without giving away what they know. So what they're trying to establish is what someone is willing to say based on a limited amount of information. If they don't say very much, then they add a little bit of a layer to say, you know what, we do know this about you. Then see how they respond to that. And so on and so on. You can imagine if they do it the opposite way. You can imagine if they just walk into the room, right, cold, and they say, Keegan, we know you've got a Dropbox. Did you commit this crime? He's probably going to say, fuck off, I need a lawyer, I'm not talking to anyone. But by doing it the opposite way, which is gradually, it's like that old thing about the frog in the boiling water. By doing it gradually, what is also happening at the same time that they gradually nudging him in the direction that they want him to go, what's also happening is he's gradually being nudged in the sense of, what else do they know? Oh, they know that. What else do they know? Oh, they know that. Do you see what I mean? It's kind of like a reverse hypnosis. He wants to know what they know, and they want to know what he knows. But what he doesn't realize is he's giving himself away, and he's making himself exposed to questioning in this thing of them slowly revealing one card at a time. It's also keeping him in the game. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to this. Stephanie says the next date is scheduled as January 13, 9 a.m. It's just a month shy of 6 years, the 6-year anniversary, right? So they kind of wrong foot him on this. Yes, you did. We know you had Dropbox. Did I send links for? What do you mean? But, right? This is like putting him in his place. But from your Dropbox account off your phone, we have started one of the largest, you can see those words, investigations ever undertaken in the state of Indiana. Well, you're okay, but that's not me. How did that? You can see he's totally wrong-footed there. He's totally flustered there, right? And what they're saying is just from your Dropbox account, we've initiated a massive investigation. We've gotten so much evidence just from that. Then he says it's a shared link, question mark, right? It's a shared link. Isn't it possible that Keegan Klein was making money, right? Think about this. Isn't it possible that Keegan Klein was making money selling images of children to other men, as I say, as a sort of precursor to OnlyFans? But like, I'll give you a link to my Dropbox account, and they don't want to give away their identity, right? And he is saying, I don't want to know your identity, just pay me, and you can pay me anonymously, right? Don't you think that is what happened? And you notice where he said earlier, I don't even want to meet these girls, right? I don't meet anyone. Well, isn't that in a way a kind of acknowledgement that he also doesn't meet his clients, because it is all about privacy and secrecy and all of that kind of thing. So when Ali said they've undertaken one of the largest you-know-what investigations ever in Indiana, do you think, and let's get your answers in chat, do you think Keegan Klein and Richard Allen are the Indiana kingpins of the great Pizzagate conspiracy? Do you think that they are these titans of some uber powerful international crime ring that's got its tentacles right around the world? These people are super, super rich, incredibly powerful, right? They are part of they are these absolute knights of the great Pizzagate conspiracy. Or do you think they're too sad sack, down on their luck losers? Do you think these are the Darth Vaders of the Pizzagate, this incredible powerhouse of evil? Do you think that they are the Darth Vaders of that, or do you think that they are sort of pathetic wannabes? Do these men look like titans of darkness? Do they look like the smartest, sharpest, most scary characters, the boogeymen that everyone is so terrified of? Or do they look like average Joes pretending to be badasses on social media? Does he look like a badass? Does he look like a badass? To be honest, I'm less interested in Keegan Klein, who I don't think committed the crime, than I am in Richard Allen, who may have. He is innocent till proven guilty. But like I said, I'm more interested in Richard Allen, but Keegan Klein does provide a sort of sketch into the heart of darkness and just how twisted the roots are within that darkness. You've already gotten a glimpse at the inside out approach, that there's a Dropbox account, that there's all sorts of photos, that there are all sorts of kind of invisible activities taking place. Okay. So what do you guys think so far? Shall I leave it at this point? Lisa says they were just sickening. Okay. Shall we leave it at that point, or do you guys want me to continue for a couple more minutes? What do you guys say? Mel says, sorry, I've got to leave. Thanks, Nick. Okay. Stephanie says, continue, please. Cheryl says, Nick, you should check out the YouTube account. I've been told over and over again to look at what somebody else said. To be honest, I sort of know who I want, who I consider an expert. And I don't think it's very good for YouTubers to what's the word, either copy or appropriate or whatever from another YouTuber. I think you should have your individual view, and then, you know, that's your view. I think there is actually a lot of lifting where everyone is actually saying the same thing. I think it's quite important to have like an independent view of things. I've got to tell you, there's some experts I admire and respect, and I'll quote them. And then the others that I don't really, you know, there's sort of less interest for me in that respect. Yeah, please note that. Please don't mention other channels on this channel. I don't really mention them by name. Please don't do the same. Okay. Okay. Let me continue. So I just want to play another section from this audio. This is Ron Logan speaking.
That was a different time, though.
Logan and the rest of the community are deeply hurt for the families involved, and that's exactly why the town is coming together.
We're a small community, and when something like this happens, you feel like you need to do something. So with the people being friends and neighbors, we wanted to raise some money for...
So if you think about what's going on here already, which is really early on, this was 5 years ago, you kind of get the sense of there's a bit of suspicion on Ron Logan, but actually it's not one of us, right? It's someone else. It's a small community. We're all neighbors. We all know each other. But do you know the pharmacist? Do you know, do you get what I'm saying? So that's the one thing I want to play. Let's play another little section from News Nation, just a short little piece, where they're also talking about Ron Logan.
And evidence of that could be found on his property. Logan, however, was never charged, and he died in 2020. Joining us now to break down the latest information and provide some context here is former FBI agent Jennifer.
So I don't know what you guys thought of that. When I saw that, I was quite taken aback. It was like one moment they were saying Ron Logan was never charged. Then they were also saying, now we're going to break down the latest information, which to me sounds like Ron Logan is the latest information. Just isn't. Ron Logan came out in 5 years ago, right? And he was never charged. So the information that came out 5 years ago, they didn't actually act on. The information that came out just this year, also probable cause, they acted on it. and that person is now charged, arrested, and he's facing a court date in like 2 months' time. Totally different to Ron Logan. Let me just play that little piece again, just that little section.
Information and provide some context here is former FBI agent Jennifer Coffendorfer, investigative producer and author that could be found on his property. Logan, however, was never charged, and he died in 2020. Joining us now to break down the latest information and provide.
So if you look at that, the sort of blurb to that video, it says, FBI warrant evidence of homicide at home of Ron Logan. I didn't really watch this whole thing. I really just watched the first minute. But it's this idea of, is this the latest development? Is stuff dealing with Ron Logan the latest development? It came out, in other words, the contents of the affidavit, as far as I know, came out in March this year. But it was actually written in March 2017. So it's not a latest development. It's just something that we know about now. The latest development is Keegan Klein. The latest development is Richard Allen. Let's look at some of your comments. Yeah, so Stargirl says, Jennifer said Logan's mobile pinged right near the bodies. So in other words, when I read that, sounds like I think Ron Logan committed this crime. So why wasn't he charged? Do you know why his phone pinged near the bodies? Because he lived there. SM Kovalinski says, I'm surprised that News Nation, I wouldn't say it's misleading. I would just say that, I don't know, it could also be, I mean, I don't want to, I respect News Nation. A lot of their coverage is excellent. But it is interesting that there's this emphasis on Ron Logan as almost like he's a brand new suspect when he was actually a old suspect. But to me, the problem is what is misleading to me is that law enforcement didn't explicitly kind of say Ron Logan's no longer a suspect. Like I've looked for that information, I just can't find it. Law enforcement, as far as I know, never explicitly said we're withdrawing Ron Logan as a suspect. I actually feel like I saw something where somebody said something to that effect. I don't know if it was just not reported, or maybe I misheard it. But I think it really needs to be made explicit. Like now, is Ron Logan a suspect? If he's not, that needs to be withdrawn because it's not really right or fair, right? Stephanie says, I thought they did, meaning I thought they did withdraw that after he died. I'll have to look again. I have been kind of looking for, because I seem to remember them being asked, is Ron Logan a suspect, and them saying, no, he's not. I've just never seen it reported as such. If not, that's a little bit clumsy, because that's an important name to cross off if that's on the cards, right? Mummy Brown says, it doesn't surprise. Okay. Yeah, so that's a great point from Bria. That's also quite a good point. Although, yeah, okay. Okay, so now we're going to deal with, again, the Keegan Klein interview transcript. It's from August 2020. So it's actually from 2 years ago. It shows you how long they've actually been pressuring him. And it actually reveals that Libby was in love with the Anthony Shots profile. And a lot of this information comes from from this link. Let's just do that. Okay, so you guys can't see that. So a lot of the information I'm going to share with you comes from this link. It is dated 4 November 2022, so it's quite recent. But this is also something that is, how can I put it? It's recent news, but based on somewhat old news, right? It refers to, is this the fake Instagram account? Oh, no, it's not. Okay. Just trying to see where it says, it actually says the words there. Meanwhile, a close study of the transcript of client's 2020 police interview has revealed that law enforcement never suspected client of being bridge guy. Can you see that? It also says here, can you see that? A previously sealed order filed on August 19, 2022 confirms that Klein was temporarily released into the custody of Indiana State Police the day that officers began a 5-week search of the Wabash River. You kind of get the idea that Klein was right there with them, assisting them in their search. It also says here, the transcript shows when Klein denied knowing who killed the girls, a polygraph test found that he was lying. Okay, this is really a interesting news article. Okay. So we're going to deal with this article in little segments, right? Now, remember I referred to this idea of a fox guarding the hen house. That's essentially what catfishing online is. The hens are teenage girls, the foxes are old pervs, right? So in what you guys may not know, the law enforcement that interviewed Keegan Klein that we dealt with a little bit earlier were Detective Vido and Clinton, right? Vido and Clinton. According to the Mail Online, quote, Klein had lied to detectives in earlier interviews, claiming to have only messaged Libby on one occasion for a couple of hours and stating that he never exchanged photos with her, right? We only messaged for a couple of hours. Now, do you remember what we went through here? He said something like, I never spoke to her, or I don't remember speaking to her. In August, officers confronted him with the fact that they knew that Anthony Schatz had messaged Libby across several weeks, offering to buy her gifts and sending pictures of himself and what he claimed was his Ferrari. So what this shows is that law enforcement had actually managed to, thanks a lot, Renee, law enforcement had actually reached a point where they were now playing some of their cards, but they also had cards. They knew exactly what was said, and they had that on hand, right? So that's a quote from the Mail Online, and they know now that they've been communicating for several weeks. That's why I say you've got to think, what on earth could the content of those messages be over several weeks, not just one day, hours on one day, weeks and weeks and weeks. What's going on? How is it escalating? Where is it going? Is Libby falling in love? Is Libby saying, I really want to meet you. I can't, I'm in love with you. I can't stop thinking about you. Right? And then where does it go from there? So Vido pulled out, this is quoting from the Mail Online, Vido pulled out specific messages in a bid to jog Klein's memory, including one where he asked, Is it bad that I'm super into you? Right? Now, one does wonder who wrote that message. Was it Klein? Was it Alan? Was it somebody else? What do you think Libby's response to that was? What do you think Libby's response to that was after that response? What do you think followed? Do you think there was an exchange of photos? Do you think there was an exchange of, you know what, I'd actually like to meet you. Yes, I'd also like to meet you. Where do you live? Well, I live here. Where do you live? Are you going to school on that day, etc., etc.? The other thing is, it's not just jogging Klein's memory by putting out specific messages. It's actually saying, we know this about you. We've got you, we're onto you. It's not just, well, we've got these messages. It's kind of like, don't lie to us, because we actually have the sort of social media transcript. And you now need to explain what's going on here. Is this you? Yes, it is. Is this you? Yes. Is that you? Yes. How about that? No, I didn't send that. What about that? No, I didn't send that. Do you know who did? So there are several authors to this profile. Yes, there are. Who are they? I'm not going to tell you. Is there any situation, any circumstance where you will tell us, right? Okay. According to Vido, am I saying it right? Is it Vido or Vido? Shots had messaged Libby during the sleepover she had with Abby ahead of their final day. As far as I know, it wasn't only that, it was also on the day. So it was during the sleepover, so on the Sunday and on the Monday. So these are additional highlights from the transcript, right? This is quoting directly from it. Vido, February 13 at 8 o'clock in the morning. So this is what he's reading. 2 separate devices, log in, log out, log in, log out, all within minutes of each other, to the same Anthony Shots Snapchat account. This is what the detective is presenting to Keegan Klein. Can you explain this? Think about this. February 13, the day of the murders, the day of a double homicide. At 8 o'clock in the morning, this is 5 hours before they arrive there, 6 hours essentially before the actual murders, probably 6.5 hours, right? 2 separate devices, log in, log out, log in, log out. That's to the Anthony Shots account. Devices, right? It could be a phone and a PC. It could be a phone and maybe an iPad or something, or a notebook. It's not one device logging in, logging out, logging in, logging out. It's 2 different devices. And it's happening within minutes of each other. And it's also the Snapchat account. Did you guys know that? Alice Snow, that's quite a good point, says Logan was never officially named a suspect. He definitely was unofficially a suspect. So no need to be publicly excluded. And I suppose you could say, because he died, they don't need to do that either. Logan says he was cleared in interviews, but police never confirmed anyone had been cleared. Thanks for putting that out. Okay. The conversation began with a friend asking Shots. This, I think, is a quote from the article. So it's unfortunate that I don't actually have the transcript, but according to the article, the friend asked Shots if he had heard about Libby and Abby. And I guess this was either the next day or anyway, subsequent to the murders. So a friend, we don't know who that friend was, but somebody asked that account, did you hear about Libby and Abby? And the profile responded, oh my God, what happened? Then said, yeah, we were supposed to meet, but she never showed up. So that is a huge acknowledgement. If that post had been deleted, who knows where this case would be today. But the fact is, this person said, we were supposed to meet, but she never showed up. Now, one does wonder, was that just talking trash or not? Well, it's hard to believe that if Anthony Shots and Libby were definitely communicating. And what is kind of going on? Nellie B says that can't be coincidental. Yeah. Klein reacted violently to this information. This is again quoting from the article. He was very upset when it was revealed that they knew that he'd said that, or that the account had said, oh my God, what happened? We were supposed to meet, but she never showed up. According to the article, Keegan Klein reacted violently to this information. He said he'd never sent such a message. He called it a fucking lie, and he accused the detective of implying that he murdered the girls, which he kind of was doing. He was kind of implying that. But basically, this gets a real rise out of Keegan Klein. So going back to the transcript, Vido says, I can honestly sit here and I'm telling you, I do not believe that you killed Liberty or Abby, and I believe him. But you need to tell me who is logging into these accounts. So you're the one that talked to her all weekend, and you're one of the last people to talk to her before she was murdered, ? That's what you're telling me. So you were trying to get NUDE images from Liberty. Keegan responded that he was trying to do that, but he was trying to do that with all the girls that he messaged, right? But that is the central question. You need to tell me who is logging into these accounts. Now, I do think it makes sense if you're saying that the Dropbox was going to multiple people, or why wouldn't certain premier members or the biggest payers, the biggest consumers, why wouldn't they be given extra special access to, right, to, for example, the Anthony Shots account? So Vida goes on and says, the other ones are not dead. She's dead. So now we're worried about grooming. We have a guy that has troves of child, you know what, on his devices. We have Liberty being groomed, and unfortunately, she was completely enthralled with Anthony Shots. Like, she is completely in love with Anthony Shots. So I don't know if you notice, we know to some extent what Keegan Klein or the Anthony Shots profile is saying. We don't really get verbatim quotes from Libby. We are getting kind of indirect information that, and you can imagine that law enforcement want to protect Libby's privacy and her integrity, but we don't know what was going on in that grooming process. We don't know what Libby did. But what we do know is that she was completely enthralled. Those are the two words that he uses. She was enthralled with Anthony Shots. She was completely in love with Anthony Shots. So what is a young girl who's completely in love with someone but only knows them online, what do they want to do? They want to meet. I mean, isn't that true of anybody? Haven't you been in love with someone online and you want to meet them? You want to make it real, right? And hey, Valentine's Day is coming up. Yeah, let's meet then. My birthday is coming up. Yeah, let's meet then. A holiday is coming up. Yeah, let's meet then. So according to the Mail Online, Vido pointed out that when Klein claimed to have stopped messaging Libby, and this is quite important, Klein claimed that he stopped messaging Libby. There she is. 2 weeks before her death, his polygraph test showed he was being truthful. Right? That's quite a statement. Let me do that. Did you guys know that? He was polygraphed on when was the last time you messaged Libby or something like that. Yeah. And or he may have said something like in a pre-polygraph test or in some statement, he may have said, he was possibly asked, when was the last time you communicated with Libby? He may have said early February, like the 1st of February or the last of January or something like that. We may have said 2 weeks before Valentine's Day. And then when he was polygraphed, was the last time you interacted with Libby online about 2 weeks before her death? Answer, yes. Result, truthful. So then who communicated with Libby on the Sunday and the Monday, the 12th and the 13th? Who communicated? Somebody else. Yeah, so Stephanie says he didn't, but somebody did from Anthony Shotz's account. Yeah. Who is that person? Would or should or could Keegan Klein have known that? Or someone that Keegan Klein knew? Could his father have known, or could his father have known, or should his father have known, or somebody else? Vido says, and this is again quoting from the transcript, the day you had your polygraph, you were steadfast. You never came off. I never spoke to Libby beyond February 1st or 2nd. Well, there it is in black and white. There it is explicit. And so you can kind of imagine, in order to keep that ball rolling, somebody else had to have been, you can't imagine that Keegan Klein was talking to Libby and then just dropped it. And then the next thing, there was a meeting. You get the feeling someone picked up the slack, someone picked up the conversation, not just for one day, but for possibly for 2 weeks, picked it up and then took it to the next step. And you almost get the sense that, did Keegan Klein abandon that, it's a terrible word to use, but lead in terms of what they were doing? Did he abandon that lead and or kind of hand it over to somebody else? And is that what he was doing, generating leads or something like that, you know? Yeah, that's true. But you kind of get the sense that him saying that is either not Keegan Klein. Yeah, he did say that she was annoying, or like communicating all the time. You can imagine if she's gotten lovesick, that it may not just be about photos now it's kind of personal. Yeah, it could have been that he sold the account off. But I was supposed to meet her, but she never showed up. Could just be him trying to cover the fact that that something innocent happened, or that he didn't know, or something like that. Yeah, it could be. Okay. So Vido says, the guy says, look, we know you spoke to her the day she was murdered. You said absolutely not. I blocked her. She was annoying me after the 1st or the 2nd. But we have these grooming pictures. We have kick messages with my daddy references. Regardless of what you say, there are 2 different authors. There it is. They're not you. The phrasing is different. It changes. it's not the same person. So there you kind of have confirmation that even law enforcement, and I must say, I would love to see some of these transcripts just to see what phrasing is idiosyncratic and why, right? It is interesting that Libby herself maybe didn't become aware of this. That, well, I'm actually, like the other day we spoke about that, don't you remember? But I guess if you're giddy and in love, like love can be blind sometimes, right? Nelly says maybe he gave the details to the other account. Yeah, it could be as simple as that. Could be. Maybe all he had was an IP address. Maybe the IP address took them to an actual computer and an actual address. Maybe it first took them to a computer shop, a computer repair shop, and then it took them to the address that was given for that computer repair shop or the phone number. You could even have the clue coming from a computer dude that Keegan Klein used to go to, right? But that is a big statement that law enforcement know that there are two different authors. I think there could even be more than two. It could be that there's multiple authors, that there's not just one author. But it could also be literally just two. But that's they are quite certain it's not the same person. They know that for a fact. It's quite adamant, right? And I found that incredible. Semantics and grammar and phraseology, similar to what we saw in the Ramsey ransom note, may be vital to nailing Richard Allen. If Richard Allen is the perpetrator, then what is needed are samples of his writing, samples of his social media. Looking at, remember in the Ramsey ransom note, we were looking at things like and hence and attaché, and what kind of person would likely use those terms, and fat cat and all of that kind of thing, right? Some people said that the writer of the ransom note seemed to be a woman. It seemed to be someone who'd watched a lot of movies. It seemed to be someone who was quite well educated. There seemed to be attempts to disguise the writing and also to disguise, like, I think business was misspelled, but it was intentionally misspelled. So in the same way, are we going to find, or are there going to be samples out there, for example, just of the note that Richard Allen has written, the one that where I did the analysis? Could he be trying to disguise how he says things, where he says the mercy of the court and begging and pleading and whatever? Is he trying to disguise how he would normally speak, for example, on social media? It's quite interesting because that is an evidence trail that's been left behind. I know when I was doing the handwriting analysis and the statement analysis, I was thinking, is this guy trying to disguise how he says things and how he writes things? And then I was forced to say, why? Why would he? Well, if there's other writing that could implicate him, well, then he would want to differentiate this writing from that writing. And so Zircon says no clue. Kay says, I was just thinking that. Stephanie says, speak or write, maybe something was written at the crime scene. I think a bit unlikely. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so one area that they're probably not going to be able to get information is from Richard Allen's current social media, because it doesn't seem to exist. I wonder whether they were able to subpoena Kathy Allen social media. Anyway, so Vido says, so during the time frame where this grooming would have been built up to a meeting with Libby, the history is gone. It's wiped from your phone. So now it all starts to stack. The complexity of your Anthony Shots persona, the cars, the influence of Lamborghinis, Ferraris. It's not you. It's not your idea. You and I both know it's not your idea. The complexity of it, okay, it's not just you. So what law enforcement seems to be saying is not that it's not Keegan Klein who came up with this persona, but it's not just you. That it took two people to cobble together this false persona with cars and all the other things, right? It wasn't just the work of one loser, right? The other thing that's interesting is he says the history is gone. And you would think, like I've just said to you, you would think in those 2 weeks, I don't know if I believe Keegan Klein when he says he didn't communicate at all. Maybe he didn't. The polygraph seems to support that, but somebody did. And the deleting of that suggests that that is crucial information. In other words, that in the 2 weeks between, I don't know if it's just from February, I don't know, or if it's from the end of the year, but anyway, let's say it's the 2 weeks. Maybe things go really up a few gears. Things get really intense and sweaty, and there's quite a lot of almost XXX communications, and then it becomes really intense, like let's meet, let's have whatever encounter. What I'm kind of talking about here is a premeditation on both sides, where both sides are absolutely clear of what is going to happen and what's going to be expected based on what has already happened, right? But the difference is one person is a teenager fantasizing about certain things and lovesick, and the other one is someone who's, I guess, doing the same thing, but is much older and is totally inappropriate. And there's a dark side to that, and there's a twist to that, and there's going to be a bloody aftermath to that. It's not going to be a soft and gentle, sweet encounter that she thinks it's going to be. It's going to be basically brutal and permanent and ugly and horrible and not romantic. But she's led to believe that it would be. So this wiping data from the phone means that looks like some data was wiped, but not all of it. Now you can almost imagine that if there are two users, that one perpetrator may wipe his phone, but the other one doesn't. Or you could have a situation where both of them wipe it from their phone, but guess what? There's another phone, it's Libby's phone, or what's on that phone. And you had exactly that situation with the Chris Watts case, where they couldn't find any communications on his phone, or very few, but they could find the communications he had with Shanann on her phone and her responses on her phone. In other words, you don't need two phones to get both sides of a conversation. You just need one. Of course, there's another dimension here where there could be a third device, right? But the fact that they had Libby's phone, I think, was a big part of how they kind of solved this, how they narrowed things down. Okay. Anyway, Klein said, in terms of this, I swear I don't know anything. Vido says, yes, you do, man. Then Clinton pipes up. He says, I just can't wrap my head around why you're willing to put all of this on you. Why are you protecting somebody else? Klein, you think I know who killed him? Vido, absolutely. I just don't understand why you're protecting the person. Was it as simply as that Libby just said, hey, I'm going to the high bridge, and you told somebody? You need to sit here and you need to start remembering more, because this is important. I think this was a mistake. I think it was a mistake that by telling Klein that they thought he simply spoke to someone about meeting on the bridge, Klein knew they weren't able to track the social media to source, which gave him room to maneuver. Anyway, the Daily Mail speculates, quote, ultimately the interview ended with Klein maintaining that he didn't know anything about what happened to the girls. Right, this was in, was it December 2020 or was it August 2020? It was August 2020. And so obviously between August 2020, when that interview was undertaken, there was pressure, and August 2022, 2 years later, coming up till the present, Keegan Klein had time to stew and for the pressure to be applied. And didn't that pressure eventually bear fruit? What do you guys think? Think about how much they got out of him and what was going on, and that there were polygraphs and everything that was going on in August 2020. And it took 2 years for that that pressure, that nudging, that that whole process to play out. Doesn't that make sense? Pistol says Klein was fessing up to not only what he was caught red-handed for, but he will deny until he's cornered enough. Yeah, and so doesn't it make sense that he did very patiently wait until right before his trial's about to start, which is, I think, very early, or sometime next year. Keegan Klein's trial is like also imminent. We've also heard that his charges have now there's been a slight, I think 5 charges were removed and 12 have been, I think there's something like 30 charges. 12 have been minimized from level 4 to level 5, if memory serves. Jenny says, I'm so grateful my kids are grown. Yeah, I mean, I think one's also got to look at this whole thing and say, what does this tell us about society, about how is it a cautionary tale? And I think just like the Kylie Rodney case is actually a cautionary tale, it's a cautionary tale about social media and engaging with social media. In a weird way, this is also a cautionary tale about social media. Verify who you're talking to. There are a lot of people who hate Elon Musk for the whole remove the trolls from Twitter, but maybe that is what all social media needs. Maybe social media needs people to be serious. Maybe the one thing social media needs is for people simply to own up to who they are. Because if you say your real name, how many people in this one chat, my chat right here, how many people give your actual names? Because as soon as you do that, you've got to be authentic. As soon as you do that, you can't hide behind whatever and be nasty or be cheeky. Now it's actually you. Now you could actually get into trouble if you say nasty things. So aren't you somewhat appropriate? Aren't you more appropriate because you say who you are? Conversely, aren't you less appropriate if you don't say who you are? So the irony is, I think young people need to be more private on social media, but I also think in order to prevent this sort of thing, people need to identify themselves on social media, and that'll prevent a lot of evil, a lot of subterfuge, a lot of problems. I think you'll have far more genuine conversations when people simply say who they are. So let's have a quick look. Adrienne says real name here. Jenny says my name is my name. Deborah says I do, and I say what you see is what you get. SW Firefly says I'm afraid to use my real name. And that is a reality. That definitely is a reality. Cappy says Keegan had nothing to do with this crime. Okay. Mary Steelman's his real name. Alison says, my name is Hope. The problem I have so let me just do this. I am going to wrap up in the next 5 minutes. The problem I have is, as a creator, you know, I've got 93,000 subscribers, lots of patrons on Patreon, many people who read my books, some people who engage with me directly. It could be on WhatsApp, it could be on email. And to be honest, sometimes I literally lose track of someone's got that name on that channel, and it's the same person, but they've got another name on that channel. It's the same person, and they've got a third name on that channel. And sometimes I can keep track of it, but sometimes I can't. And I've literally had a situation where I think I said to someone, oh, JD, are you whomever? And although I guess I suspected it, but that just creates unnecessary confusion. 3 different profiles for the same person. Obviously, when you know these people really well, then it's quite clear, but it is preferable that someone just uses their own name. And I think all my, how can I put it, all my best patrons and members, I know their real names. And, you know, I might be going to America next year, and then, yeah, you want to meet the person that you've actually been having conversations with and know their name, right? Doesn't that make sense? Do you want to know their name for the first time when you actually meet, or do you want to know their name before the time? That's the other side. You want to have a real relationship with someone, right? It's exactly this with Bridge Guy and Libby. Libby wants a real relationship, but someone's playing a little game. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you're not part of a game. That counts for just online relationships in general, whether it's friendships or whatever. Everyone wants genuine relationships, but some people can't afford to say who they are, I guess. Sokoi Cat says, my name is my cat. Okay. Okay. Bria says, I wouldn't want to meet anyone if I didn't know their name. Bria, I've got a feeling we're going to meet at some point, because I feel like I can't stay out of France, and I know you're in France, so yeah. Songbird says, you know my name on Instagram. Okay. Azza Jensen, real name. Cool. Okay, so I think that is it from my side. I'm just going to do a quick Google search, Delphi, see if there's any news. Richard. Yeah, it's just basically Richard Allen Penn's jailhouse letter saying wife is in hiding. He's at the mercy of the court. Did you guys notice that there was no mention really of his daughter? Also, what I found quite interesting was there was also no mention at all that I am innocent. The words I am innocent didn't appear in that letter. You would imagine if you were innocent, right? If you were arrested, charged, all of this is going on with your wife, and you're pleading not guilty, you would imagine one of the first, last, or certainly central things in your letter would be, Judge, I'm innocent. By the way, I need a public defender, right? Wouldn't it? Wouldn't you say that? I didn't do this. It doesn't come up at all. It's just that I don't really have much money. Jenny says, thanks everyone in chat. Mods and Nick, great show. Nelly says, just because my name is doesn't mean it's true. Yeah, but I think there needs to be more. My name is, this is who I am, right? There needs to be more of that. Tanya Bowman says, I wish there were captions available for those of us who are semi-deaf. Okay, are they not available? I'll try and look into that. Bria says you would love Bordeaux. Can't wait to show you around here. So if you guys saw, you probably can't hear it now, but if you guys saw the short that I put up, there was a huge storm this afternoon, and I was walking my dog, and there was this incredible band of cloud, like a cell, and there was this thin strip of blue around it, almost like you were seeing a giant gray island with a thin line of tropical water, like in the sea, except it was this huge storm cell moving, and there's even gray cloud on the other side, but somehow there's this thin strip of blue light around it with these horns of dark gray, and I actually thought at any moment a tornado may snake out of that. And there was literally roiling cloud. The cloud was literally doing this and kind of swimming at great speed, and there was lightning sparking all over it. It was really quite spectacular and also quite scary. So I kind of saw that, didn't have my phone with me, had to get back home to get my phone. By the time I got back to the field, it was quite dark, but I could still kind of make something out. By then, that incredible system had changed to some extent. Anyway, I did put a short onto YouTube, and then the rain started falling, and it did hail, and we kind of had a storm throughout the night, quite a big storm. It's subsided now, but I came home a few minutes ago in the rain, and it's just been pouring with rain. So that big storm that was threatening, that wasn't an empty threat. There was literally quite a lot of rain. So if you haven't watched that short of the weather, make sure you catch that. Okay, that's it from my side. Do you guys want me to cover more of the Keegan-Klein transcript? If you do, let me know in the comments. Did you guys learn something in this analysis? I hope you did. I feel quite embarrassed about the handwriting analysis I did. I was so bleary-eyed. Yeah, I just was, it's something that I really enjoyed doing, but I was definitely sort of, in Afrikaans you say deur die blare, which means sort of through the leaves. You sort of still trying to wake up. So I hope you guys found that okay, at least. I hope you guys found it worthwhile. Cool. Bria says, I always learn something here. Okay, so I'm gonna sign off. Touche says, thanks, Nick, great show. It always makes me think, makes me think deeper. I'm gonna sign off. I know I've been making repeated promises that I'm going to do Amanda Knox, but I really think I'm going to be doing it tomorrow. So look out for that. I'm going to be doing that. I also did I thought a really interesting interview with a fantastic author. His book's been reviewed over 2,400 times. That's like the jackpot. His name's Justin Fox. It's the TCRS Book Club interview I did. It's on the timelines, go through the videos. But even if you don't like maritime history, it's fascinating because he sent me all these photos of ships from 1941, and it's really a fascinating story. I think people who did watch that found it really interesting. So even if it's not your cup of tea, watch 5 minutes of it and see what you think. Okay. Love Tina says, Happy Veterans Day. Have you guys all voted? Did you guys all vote? Where's all of that looking at this moment? Are you guys in America concerned? Are you excited? Are you cautiously optimistic, cautiously pessimistic? How are you guys feeling? Nelly says, I'm going to go back now and watch the first 85 minutes. Hope you find it interesting. Renee says, do Justin Fox again. You're great together. I felt quite bad because the opening clip that I played says something about, I'm a rider, this is what I look like. And I don't know whether it seemed like a I don't know. I was simply trying to convey through that there's an aspect to a writer that is, how can I put it, not glamorous, sort of troubled, and there's difficulty involved. And I kind of wanted to start the conversation there, with acknowledging that, or saying, no, it's actually not true. I write effortlessly. It's really easy. But it sort of came across a little bit different to how I expected it. Also, he hadn't seen the movie Limitless, so I felt a little bit bad about how I started that show. But I was trying to address the question of, what is the truth behind writing a bestseller? Is it the fact that you're brilliant and it just flows off the hands and you've got this brilliant mind? Or is it very hard, bloody work kind of thing? Bonnie Bryan, thanks so much. Bria says, love Justin Fox. Jenny says, another great show. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for being here. Mods, members, subs, new subscribers, everyone who contributed super chats. If you're watching this on replay, you are welcome to show your appreciation if you feel any by hitting the thanks button. Also, I'm trying to grow this channel. I'm trying to get to 100,000 subs. And I have more difficulty than a lot of other channels, because being authentic means I don't go the sensational route. I don't try and shock people. I try and tell the truth. So it's a lot of a slower, harder grind. So if you guys love me, love my channel, you can help me get to where the channel needs to go by every now and then sharing a video that you really like or enjoyed or gained insights from on your social media, or on social media sites that deal with, for example, the Delphi murders. I'm not really on Facebook, so if you want to share to there, that would be great. Those groups, if you want to share it to Reddit, please do that. If you want to share it onto Twitter, if you want to, onto your networks, onto wherever, if you want to WhatsApp it to someone, you can also do that. You just hit the share button and it offers all those options. You can email, tweet, share to LinkedIn, share it to Facebook, wherever, your Facebook, whatever. If you never do that, do it for once. Share, we say like, share, leave a comment. Almost everyone likes. Many of you leave a comment. How many of you share? Please do share. SW Firefly says, I'm amazed you aren't at 100K yet. No more amazed than I am. I'm like, what is taking so long? Yes, sir, will do. Thanks very much. Okay, Peaches and Scout Leaders, thanks a lot for being here. I hope you have a good evening. It's 1 o'clock in the morning here. I need to get some sleep. I've got an appointment with an orthopedic surgeon first thing tomorrow morning. I'm hoping for good news, but also I think I've got to be realistic. But anyway, hold thumbs. But take care, guys. Thanks a lot for it's really been a nice time with you guys. Enjoyed your comments. Take care and see you guys next time.